Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
When I was 24, I would pee, I would shake it, zip it up, and walk away. Now that I'm 44, I would pee, shake it, zip it up, walk away, and then like 30 seconds later, just more pee comes out. Not a lot, but enough to halt a conversation.
Good morning. It's Saturday, Rules Saturday, September the 27th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have no free lunch, motivation, meditation, and return to the primitive. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now, there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David Bahnsen.
In an economy strewn with capital-guzzling industries long past their time of profitability, old companies that cannot create jobs themselves but can stand in the way of job creation. George Gilder. The reason to understand creative destruction and one's understanding of free enterprise is not merely to enable emotional acceptance of its necessity, though that is important. The policy tools designed to resist creative destruction are themselves among the most destructive things any free economy has ever encountered. If we desire job creation, then we cannot support subsidizing failed companies. Nothing less than optimal resource allocation is at stake in the subject of creative destruction.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the rules for anti-radicals. And this is from the chapter 5 about activism. You frame the issue, not your opposition. As I will repeatedly hammer into your brain, the problem is what you want to solve. The issue is how you frame the debate to solve the problem. Frame your issue to maximize your core constituency of supporters. Terminology controls the debate. The left learned this long ago. They aren't pro-abortion, they're pro-choice. They aren't for gun control, they are against gun violence. Each phrase implies a unique set of motivations and goals, and each should be saleable to the target demographic. Do you want the opposition via phraseology telling the world what you want? Bill branding. When debating proposed legislation, the struggle over terminology extends to the name of the bill itself, or the language you use to describe the bill. We once killed a mandatory gun storage bill by rebranding it the Rapist Protection Act. This so unnerved the radical sponsor that she actually stood before the chamber to whine, "I would never introduce a Rapist Protection Act." Hold the highest-ranking elected official responsible. In the Medical Records Disclosure Act debate described in Chapter 10, we didn't blame the sponsors of the bill nor the bureaucrats who endorsed it. We found a plausible reason to blame the governor, making his life just a little bit miserable. Concentrate fire. I often say that I am but a lightning rod whose job is to gather energy and channel it into particular legislators and corporations. Knowing supporters' attention span will last only for a finite number of phone calls or emails, your goal is to focus input from as many people as possible onto as few targets as possible in order to maximize the number of contacts received by each. Cultivate a persona of power. Not coincidentally, the legislative process is intimidating to people unfamiliar with its complexities. Prove 4 things to politicians. Unless you are taken seriously, you will be ignored. Accordingly, you must demonstrate 4 things. 1, that you're a serious person in serious business. 2, that you have numbers to back you up. 3, that you inflict pain in the election season for transgressions committed in the legislative season. And 4, that absent satisfactory resolution of your problem, you will never, ever go away. Top 3 principles in motivating supporters. Defense is easier than offense. Alerts must convey clear and present danger. Never hype a non-existent threat. And that was from the book, Rules for Anti-Radicals. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, rules for retrogrades.
Rule 11. Never trust a man who is unwilling to have enemies. Acquiring adversaries and opposition is the unavoidable price of principle. Speaking the truth will earn a man enemies. It is a matter of when, not if. And the louder one speaks, the quicker the adversaries will gather. After all, a man cannot stand and genuflect at once. How can he stand up for truth if he's always bending the knee at the altar of taboo, observing popular pieties, palliating any and all imaginable parties offended, the man of appeasement has no religion. He is a loveless and a heartless creature. Do not befriend him. In his compulsive need to please all sides, the good and the wicked simultaneously, he is incapable of your friendship. The only true loyalty between human beings arises from a mutual, virtuous commitment to the truth. And the man unwilling to have enemies cannot, by definition, commit himself to the truth. Thus, an alternative expression of the same rule reads, a man without actual enemies can have no true friends. Jesus said that if the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. While he stated this caution conditionally, he meant it as a guarantee. Christians can neither accommodate nor be accommodated by the world. Simply put, unless the worldly culture hates us, then we are failing at our job. Being God's spies does not mean that we hide our credo. In certain times we mute the source of it, but we never mute the credo itself. The credo is what earns the righteous their enemies. There exist only 3 types of friendship, 2 of which are mere shades of the single true form: true friends, friends of pleasure, and friends of utility. Friendships of utility are the most accidental form of friendship, according to the Aristotelian tradition, because the benefits they confer are material and wholly impersonal. In this case, you play with the kid down the block just because he has a swimming pool, even if you dislike him. Friendships of pleasure qualify as closer to true friendships because such friends are mutually attracted to something personal in one another, not a mere material benefit. However, the desideratum, which mutually attracts friends of pleasure, is not virtue. Only the true sort of friends are mutually attracted by one another's virtue, like iron sharpening iron, as St. Paul writes. Retrogrades, take heart. Audacious, intrepid men live and breathe who are worthy of your friendship, provided simply that you make yourself worthy of theirs. True friendships, as opposed to friendships of utility and pleasure, prove to be rare, but not non-existent. How does one find such men but by flying the banner and the colors of the retrograde? Signal who you are and what you stand for: the truth. You act in the name of St. Michael. You will do your utmost until your dying breath to give aid to the righteous and to vanquish the wicked. Fellow retrogrades in your area will recognize and join you if you're doing your job well.
And that was Rules for Retrogrades, Rule 11, 40 Tactics to Defeat the Radical Left by Timothy J. and David R. Gordon. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, from the book Waking the Sleeping Giant, Tactic 2, Divide and Conquer. Identity politics is an easy way to build a power base. The stronger a group's sense of isolation and alienation from other groups, the easier it is for the left to manipulate them into voting blocks to increase their own power. Race is an especially easy target of opportunity for spreading the leftist agenda because it is so visible. Despite the radical left's insistence that it will take decades and cost trillions to right the wrong of past discrimination, the mainstream actually bought into Dr. King's vision fairly easily. Dr. King appealed to our heads in that there was no rational argument in favor of treating people unfairly because of their skin color. He also appealed to our hearts in that it just seemed wrong to treat people unfairly because of their race. But whereas mainstreamers believe that people should be treated as individuals and that character and merit should prevail, liberals insist that rights should be parceled out based on the identity of the group. Of course, the left assures us that their intentions are pure. The surface argument that liberals target race to make up for past discrimination may sound credible at first. As is the case with most liberal claims, however, this argument does not hold up under closer scrutiny. How do liberals explain their savaging of Justice Clarence Thomas, or black conservatives supported by the Tea Party? Instead of supporting black conservatives to make up for past discrimination, we hear the stupefying claim that they are not black enough. For the left, black seems to be more of a voting bloc than a race. How do liberals explain the damage done to poor families, and most notably poor black families, as a result of decades of liberal policies? Nothing short of catastrophic. Those results cannot be explained away as unintended consequences of good intentions, since the liberal policies and their effects have been evident for decades. One would have to try not to see the social havoc wrought when welfare bureaucrats usurp the father's role in the family. So if liberals cannot claim to be ignorant of the damage caused by their policies, we can only conclude that the results are acceptable to them, if not intentional. After all, who benefits from the creation of a permanent underclass, a disproportionate percentage of whom are black and most of whom feel alienated from the rest of society? White liberals benefit at every election from a massive black vote. They own the votes of the poor, and they have no incentive to correct their course in order to promote real prosperity. Studies show beyond doubt that children of married couples are far less likely to live in poverty than those born out of wedlock. Out-of-wedlock births, however, have skyrocketed, particularly in black communities, since liberals began their social experimentation in the 1960s. But anyone who questions the wisdom of subsidizing out-of-wedlock births is accused of hating the poor or being racist. The left's opposition to border security and their opposition to all efforts to assimilate immigrants seem designed to grow yet another block of alienated and resentful voters. Having progressively alienated more and more voters, the left desperately needs to import, polarize, and register new voters, dead or alive, legal or illegal. A popular threat among left-wing radicals in the 60s was that they would impose their will upon the rest of us by any means necessary, and they're making good on that threat. Women against men, old against young, race against race, on and on, the liberal scythe separates and polarizes people who would otherwise be united by bonds of family, neighborhood, community, tradition, and country. As always, ask yourself one question: who benefits from all the divisiveness? The answer will always be the same: liberal politicians. And that was tactic number 2 from the book, Waking the Sleeping Giant. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now a little bit of motivation.
The world wants to control your mind. And there's a battle for the way you think. Why? Because whatever gets your attention gets you.
What gets your attention is what matters.
Think about what you're thinking about. You got to decide. Are you going to let these things control you, or are you going to control them?
What I tell people all the time is, if they can't find one thing, they'll be distracted by many things. What you focus on expands.
If you hit a tree 1,000 times in 1,000 different spots, there's no guarantee it's going to fall. But if you hit a tree 1,000 times in that same exact spot, she's going to come to the ground. I need you to do the exact same thing every single day for the next 10, 15, 20 years and watch that tree come down.
Driven people destroy everything that gets in their way. You get my way, I'll bury you. Let me explain what driven means. The way that your eyes look, the way that you're paying attention in this room right now, it means everything. The little things don't mean a lot, they mean everything. How you wake up when the sun don't shine. How you wake up when you just lost your best customer. You lost 1 million, you lost 100. Don't care. Don't care. I ain't going down. I'm staying high. I'm not going there.
Hold a vision of yourself being successful in the future with whatever you do. That's what you want to do, because your thoughts have magnetic power. Where focus goes, energy, persistence, faith, and determination flows.
You must wake up and take control of your mind. I don't feel like it. Shut your mouth. Winners live where quitters concentrate, learning how to focus in. And you'll be surprised at the things that you're able to do. When you learn how to block things out, when you learn how to keep thine eyes single. Stay focused on your actions. Don't worry about what the haters say, or what your ex-girlfriend says, or your aunts and your uncles. Nobody gives a fuck. It's irrelevant.
You got to block out all the negative people. You got to block out every single obstacle. And you got to keep your eyes on the prize. You got to stay focused.
If you look at documentaries on successful people, they are weird because they've seen things that no one else seen for their career path. They're living beyond what is expected because they were obedient to the vision.
Stay focused. Stop caring what everyone thinks about what you're trying to accomplish. They can't possibly know or care how you feel. You must make decisions based on what you want first. Everyone else has their own agenda. Why not you? You should be so focused, so busy on your own life, keeping the main thing, until you're oblivious as to what's going on around you.
Everything seems like it's important when you try to make your goals become a reality. But everything is not important. You got to make a decision. What's first? What's second? What's third? You got to concentrate on one thing at a time. Because if you chase two rabbits, you won't catch none. Action is important. Work is important, yes, but work with no concentration. Work with no focus means what? You're doing three things poorly. And what I'm trying to teach you is don't do three things poorly. It's better to do one thing great. And so your concentration, what you're focusing on throughout the course of the day, it has to change. What you're looking at, what you're reading, what you're watching, the conversations you have. You must now be focused on your dreams. You must be focused on your goals. It's always a result of a commitment to excellence, intelligent planning, and focused effort. And so in your life, I need you to get to that point where you become a master at this thing, a master at your life, a master at your goals, where you're 25 moves ahead. Like you're so strategic. You got this thing, you strategize it. You got this thing mapped up. You're not just waking up and saying, well, whatever happens next week happens. But you become methodic about your life. You start planning stuff out. You start taking notes. You start checking. You start paying attention to things that you never take. You are 25 moves ahead. I want you to be like a master chess player where you're constantly thinking about what's next. I'm telling you right now, I need you to get focused. And when you get focused, it's okay to keep thinking about that same thing over and over again. But don't think about 10, 20 things. You get locked in like a pit bull on that one thing. And you focus on the now. You master the now. You become an expert of the now. I'm guaranteeing you, you're going to blow up. This year, I will make this goal become a reality. I won't talk about it anymore. And after today, I'm not playing games anymore. I'm not pretending anymore. I'm not doing the facade no more. I don't care what people say or think. I'm not doing that no more. I want the influence, the impact, the income. I want it. It might take me 5 days to do what it takes you to do in 1 day, but I'm going to do it in 5. It may take me 4 weeks to read a book that you can read in a week. And guess what happens? If you don't have phenomenal skill, but you got phenomenal will, you can make up for skill. You ain't got to be perfect, but if you perfect every day, if you perfect every opportunity, I guarantee you're going to have it, you're going to be it, you're going to do it.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Bill O'Reilly making his usual and customary mistakes.
Oh, Mamdani is dominating this poll. And I still believe that Adams is going to drop out. I don't know whether Cuomo's got enough chops to win this because all the polls say the same thing. Zoran is way out in front. And I'm not really sure what that's all about because you could say anything. And Mamdani doesn't answer tough questions. He doesn't say, oh, look, you say, hey, once you go on WABC with O'Reilly, he'll interview you. What do you think Zoran's going to say? Yeah, not in this lifetime. And I wouldn't be rude to him. I would just ask him essential questions like, hey, quality of life is declining in New York City. Do you agree or not? And he's going to, no, it's fine. I'm going to go pot smoke everywhere, homeless everywhere, drug addicts running wild, heroin and fentanyl dealing on the street in public view. The streets are dirty and filthy, congestion all over the place, and you think things are fine? And then they go, whoa, we need to make some improvement. I said, okay, what do you do? What are you going to do? You're not going to put new grocery stores in. That's not happening. You don't have the capital to build the stores and stock them. City is broke. City owes millions and millions of dollars. So this is all, a fable.
Okay, so there he goes. And again, making his usual mistakes. He's always the guy that's going to ask the tough questions, but he's stupid. He doesn't understand how to ask tough questions of a liberal, or in this particular case, to socialists. Again, and he made note of the fact that Mamdani won't even sit down with him for an interview. Why is that? Because Bill O'Reilly, and as have most right-wing talk show hosts, has been marginalized. The mainstream, if you will, or for-profit media has marginalized him and others, just dismissing them as right-wing extremists. And so there's no reason. This gives a green light to all of the leftists, all of the Democrats, to simply ignore people like Bill O'Reilly. So what does he do to fix this? He has to start asking questions that the Democrats want answered. The questions he just delineated here are great questions for conservatives. Those are questions conservatives want to hear answered. But the Democrats don't care. They do existentially, but they don't care about it politically. So he has to find the issues that matter to the Democrats, like single-payer health care. He touched on one with the that he just dismissed very breezily. You're not going to open grocery stores. That's a weakness. He is planning on having government-run grocery stores. So that's one thing that you can sit down and discuss with him. As a matter of fact, you just do it on your own. You tell he could be spending this time, Bill O'Reilly could, and telling Democrats, why would you want to vote for this guy? He has no plans. He says he's going to go ahead and open grocery stores, but he has no plans. What about single-payer health care? What's he going to do about that? What's he going to do to reduce the city's reliance on greenhouse gases? Or what is he going to do to reduce the city's carbon footprint? When you start asking, what's he going to do to house the homeless? Okay, so when you ask questions like that, those are questions that Mamdani, has to answer. He has to answer those questions because his supporters want the answers. They want to know. They don't care about marijuana smoke in the city. Half of them are probably stoned anyways. So a question about marijuana smoke is stupid. It's a waste of time. So again, if Bill O'Reilly wants to be relevant, He has to make himself relevant, ask the questions Democrats want to hear. Then the New York Times is going to have to start covering that. They're going to have to come back with a response. Bill O'Reilly asked about what the mayor is going to do about single-payer health care. And as a matter of fact, the New York Times may very well have then be forced to go to Mamdani and ask him, what are you going to do about single-payer health care? How are you going to bring that about? Right? So now, when that starts happening, O'Reilly becomes a player. When he starts going after Mamdani's base and trying to discourage his base from voting for him, he must go on Bill's show and answer. So, again, sum it up, Bill O'Reilly is stupid. He does this all the time. I'd ask tough questions. He said this about Biden, complaining that nobody was asking Biden the tough questions and that Bill O'Reilly, had the tough questions. No, he didn't, because Biden knows he doesn't have to answer any of Bill O'Reilly's conservative questions. Okay? The only questions that Biden had to answer were liberal questions, and the same thing goes with Mamdani. Someday, hopefully, Bill O'Reilly will get some brains and figure it out. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of Maria Bartiromo and her guest.
And, you didn't really hear that from any UN officials this week at the UN General Assembly. What do you want to say to those people who identify as being Palestinian? Where is their home?
Look, you go and you say, number one, we're not going to make a country out of terrorists. Just indiscriminate killing of Israelis for nothing more than being Jews. That's what goes on constantly. And anything that is done to justify this, I always see it under the lens of they're trying to justify why they killed Jews previously and why they're going to kill Jews in the future.
Let me switch.
So there you go. She at the very end there she says, wrong answer. What she should have done was call him out on this and tell him that's not the question I asked you. You are obfuscating, and I asked you, where is their home? Again, she's asking for a statement of certainty, and he refuses to give it. And he won't give it because he has been brainwashed or, we'll call it brainwashed, punished every time as he's growing up, because this is a relatively young-looking guy, and every time when he was growing up and he expressed certainty of knowledge, he was punished by people, his friends, his classmates, his maybe even his parents and siblings, punished him for daring to express certainty of knowledge. So he got in the habit of learning how to obfuscate, to talk around a question like this. But this is no different than the situation we had yesterday with Stuart Varney asking for a yes or no response and getting a verbal barrage instead. And this guy does exactly the same thing. Now, shame on Maria Bartiromo for not following up and say, excuse me, I didn't ask you about all that. I asked you, where do Palestinians call home? So you either know or you don't know. If you don't know, tell me you don't know. That kind of thing. That's a good follow-up. But anyways, that's again another example of skepticism in action. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit more Maria Bartiromo.
Throw them back. And number two, I'm going to go kick in their front door. But it's like NATO wants us to have the argument of maybe we should just go talk to the HOA instead. That's what's going on. He's got to be laughing about it.
Well, I spoke with the president of Poland, and he, too, had to shoot down drones. They said there wasn't any ammunition on the drones, but these drones are coming from Russia into Poland. This has regular civilians going into the military, they want to be ready just in case Russia accelerates this.
Every time that happens, it is a test, and the test has been failed.
Okay, so there you go. The skepticism on display again. If you want to be in a situation where now Maria Bartiromo is assuming the role of skeptic. Before, she was asking normal questions. Where are the Palestinians supposed to live? Asking for a statement of certainty. Now, what she's doing is she's going to be a skeptic because she's not going to ask a question that requires a statement of certainty. She's not going to ask a question at all. She's going to simply stop talking. So what we end up with here is not a conversation between these two people. We end up with two people talking. One person talks for a little while, then they stop. The other person starts talking. And then when they stop, then the other person starts talking again. So what this is demonstrating is that with skepticism, if you cannot or will not make statements of certainty, you cannot communicate. You cannot converse with anybody. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now another Maria Bartiromo with a guest.
Packed pews, overflowing parking lots. Catholic ministries on college campuses also reporting a surge in attendance throughout their 250 operations over the last week. Joining me now is Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo. Raymond, great to have you. You've been covering religious events for years. Have you ever seen anything like this?
Well, not in America, Maria. And I have to say, we saw those two young millennial saints that were just welcomed into the church, the Catholic Church, that Pope Leo brought in just weeks ago. But this Charlie Kirk thing is really, it's a tidal wave is what it is. I have sons.
Okay, so he goes blathering on. So again, she asked for a statement of certainty. Have you ever seen anything like this? It's a yes or no question. He almost makes the statement of certainty. But he says not in America. He wiggles out of it again. So he's a skeptic. He's not going to. And I imagine he is also a younger looking guy. He's also probably been one of those people that's been punished his whole life for daring to say yes, no, I don't know, and any type of statement of certainty. And so now he's going to just simply talk around the question. And what's also important about this, as I've said before, is you have friends. And sometimes you need those friends or family, for that matter, that might do this, pull this stunt, is that you need to get information from them. I had a friend that asked me, he explained a situation with he ran into a former lover and somebody that wanted to get married to him. He didn't. He ended up marrying somebody else. He asked me, he explains all this and what happened in the relationship and blah, 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 blah. And then asked me, did I make the right decision? And it's a yes or no question. And I said, yes, you did. And I told him why he made the right decision. And he told me that of all of his friends, he'd asked all of his other friends the same question, and that I was the only one that was able and willing to give him a straight answer. So that's just something to note here. If you're going to deal with this guy, Raymond, and you want to be his friend, don't expect that he's going to be able to give you any good answers to any questions, where you have any questions where you need certainty of knowledge. Don't expect this guy to be there for you. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, one last one with Maria and Raymond.
That ministers serving American parishes could be forced to leave the U.S. before their paperwork is even cleared, Raymond. You've spoken with Secretary of State Marco Rubio about this, right?
I did indeed. No, we talked.
There you go. So now, finally, they actually communicate. They actually listen. He's actually listening to her. She asks him for a definitive answer, asks him for a statement of certainty. You spoke to Secretary Rubio, didn't you? He said, I did indeed, which is a good substitute for yes. So he responded with certainty. So now we know that these two are actually listening to each other rather than she talks, he talks, she talks, he talks. Much better. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now from an account on X, and it reads, massive. Antifa's time is up. U.S. troops are now being deployed by President Trump and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to use full force on Antifa if needed. Left-wing terrorists are about to be in for a rude awakening. The siege is coming to an end. I guess this is happening in Portland. It's showing video of Antifa squaring off against what I imagine are troops and being subject to tear gas and other things. And what bothers me about this is that all of these young people that are out there in the streets, they're the ones that are being subjected to the all of the tear gas, to being subjected. Probably some of them are going to be arrested, some are going to be injured, while the people that called them out onto the street, that sent them out onto the street, are sitting at home in their living rooms watching the whole thing on TV and then patting themselves on the back for what a great job they did while they sip a glass of wine. What these so-called leaders should be doing, if they have any guts, is leading from the front. They should be right there in Portland with these Antifa rank and file members. So if you're an Antifa, you're a Democrat, you should be really angry about it, because I don't like it. I don't like it. And, again, it's wrong. It's beyond, I was going to say hypocrites, but it's even worse than hypocrites. Using people as tools is just absolutely wrong. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the remainder of Chapter 3 from Ayn Rand's book, Return of the Primitive.
Young people do seek a comprehensive view of life, i.e., a philosophy. They do seek meaning, purpose, ideals. And most of them take what they get. It is in their teens and early 20s that most people seek philosophical answers and set their premises, for good or evil, for the rest of their lives. Some never reach that stage. Some never give up the quest. But the majority are open to the voice of philosophy for a few brief years. These last are the permanent, if not innocent, victims of modern philosophy. They are not independent thinkers nor intellectual originators. They are unable to answer or withstand the flood of modern sophistries. So some of them give up after one or two unintelligible courses, convinced that thinking is a waste of time, and turn into lethargic cynics or stultified babbits by the time they reach 25. Others accept what they hear. They accept it blindly and literally. These are today's activists. And no matter what tangle of motives now moves them, every teacher of modern philosophy should cringe in their presence if he is still open to the realization that it is by means of the best within them, by means of their twisted, precarious groping for ideas, that he has turned them into grotesque little monstrosities. Now, what happens to the better minds in modern universities, to the students of above-average intelligence who are actually eager to learn? What they find and have to endure is a long, slow process of psycho-epistemological torture. Directly or indirectly, the influence of philosophy sets the epistemological standards and methods of teaching for all departments in the physical sciences as well as in the humanities. The consequence today is a chaos of subjective whims, setting the criteria of logic, of communication, demonstration, evidence, proof, which differ from class to class, from teacher to teacher. I am not speaking of a difference in viewpoint or content, but of the absence of basic epistemological principles and the consequent difference in the method of functioning required of a student's mind. It is as if each course were given in a different language, each requiring that one think exclusively in that language, none providing a dictionary. The result, to the extent that one would attempt to comply, is intellectual disintegration. Add to this the opposition to system building, i.e. to the integration of knowledge, with the result that the material taught in one class contradicts the material taught in the others, each subject hanging in a vacuum and to be accepted out of context, while any questions on how to integrate it are rejected, discredited, and discouraged. Add to this the arbitrary, senseless, haphazard conglomeration of most curricula, the absence of any hierarchical structure of knowledge, any order, continuity, or rationale, the jumble of courses on out-of-context minutiae and out-of-focus surveys, the all-pervading unintelligibility, the arrogantly self-confessed irrationality, and consequently, the necessity to memorize rather than learn, to recite rather than understand, to hold in one's mind a cacophony of undefined jargon long enough to pass the next exam. Add to this the professors who refuse to answer questions, the professors who answer by evasion and ridicule, the professors who turn their classes into bull sessions on the premise that we're here to mull things over together, the professors who do lecture, but in the name of anti-dogmatism, take no stand, express no viewpoint, and leave the students in a maze of contradictions with no lead to a solution. The professors who do take a stand and invite the students' comments, then penalize dissenters by means of lower grades, particularly in political courses. Add to this the moral cowardice of most university administrations, the policy of permanent moral neutrality, of compromising on anything, of evading any conflict at any price, and the student's knowledge that the worst classroom injustice will remain uncorrected, that no appeal is practicable and no justice is to be found anywhere. Yes, of course, there are exceptions. There are competent educators, brilliant minds, and rational men on the university staffs, but they are swallowed in the rampaging mainstream of irrationality, and too often defeated by the hopeless pessimism of bitter, long-repressed frustration. And further, most professors and administrators are much more competent and rational as individuals than they are in their collective performance. Most of them realize and privately complain about the evils of today's educational world. But each of them feels individually impotent before the enormity of the problem. So they blame it on some nameless, disembodied, almost mystical power, which they designate as the system. And too many of them take it to be a political system, specifically capitalism. They do not realize that there is only one human discipline which enables men to deal with large-scale problems, which has the power to integrate and unify human activities, and that discipline is philosophy, which they have set instead to the task of disintegrating and destroying their work. What does all this do to the best minds among the students? Most of them endure their college years with the teeth-clenched determination of serving out a jail sentence. The psychological scars they acquire in the process are incalculable, but they struggle as best they can to preserve their capacity to think, sensing dimly that the essence of the torture is an assault on their mind, and what they feel toward their schools ranges from mistrust to resentment to contempt to hatred, intertwined with a sense of exhaustion and excruciating boredom. To various extents and various degrees of conscious awareness, these feelings are shared by the entire pyramid of the student body, from intellectual top to bottom. This is the reason why the handful of Berkeley rebels was able to attract thousands of students who did not realize at first the nature of what they were joining and who withdrew when it became apparent. Those students were moved by a desperate, incoherent frustration, by a need to protest, not knowing fully against what, by a blind desire to strike out at the university somehow. I asked a small group of intelligent students at one of New York's best universities, who were ideologically opposed to the rebels, whether they would fight for the university administration if the rebellion came to their campus. All of them shook their heads with faint, wise, bitter smiles. The philosophical impotence of the older generation is the reason why the adult authorities, from the Berkeley administration to the social commentators to the press to Governor Brown, were unable to take a firm stand and had no rational answer to the Berkeley Rebellion. Granting the premises of modern philosophy, logic was on the side of the rebels. To answer them would require a total philosophical reevaluation, down to basic premises, which none of those adults would dare attempt. Hence the incredible spectacle of brute force, hoodlum tactics, and militantly explicit irrationality being brought to a university campus, and being met by the vague, uncertain, apologetic concessions, the stale generalities, the evasive platitudes of the alleged defenders of academic law and order. In a civilized society, a student's declaration that he rejects reason and proposes to act outside the bounds of rationality would be taken as sufficient grounds for immediate expulsion, let alone if he proceeded to engage in mob action and physical violence on a university campus. But modern universities have long since lost the moral right to oppose the first and are therefore impotent against the second. The student rebellion is an eloquent demonstration of the fact that when men abandon reason, they open the door to physical force as the only alternative and the inevitable consequence. The rebellion is also one of the clearest refutations of the argument of those intellectuals who claimed that skepticism and chronic doubt would lead to social harmony. When men reduce their virtues to the approximate, then evil acquires the force of an absolute. When loyalty to an unyielding purpose is dropped by the virtuous, it's picked up by scoundrels, and you get the indecent spectacle of a cringing, bargaining, traitorous good and a self-righteously uncompromising evil. Atlas shrugged. Who stands to profit by that rebellion? The answer lies in the nature and goals of its leadership. If the rank and file of the college rebels are victims, at least in part, this cannot be said of their leaders. Who are their leaders? Any and all of the statist collectivist groups that hover like vultures over the remnants of capitalism, hoping to pounce on the carcass and to accelerate the end whenever possible. Their minimal goal is just to make trouble, to undercut, to confuse, to demoralize, to destroy. Their ultimate goal is to take over. To such leadership, the college rebels are merely cannon fodder, intended to stick their headless necks out, to fight on campuses, to go to jail, to lose their careers and their future, and eventually, if the leadership succeeds, to fight in the streets and lose their non-absolute lives, paving the way for the absolute dictatorship of whoever is the bloodiest among the thugs scrambling for power. Young fools who refuse to look beyond the immediate now have no way of knowing whose long-range goals they are serving.
And that was Chapter 3, the end of Chapter 3, from The Return of the Primitive, The Anti-Industrial Revolution by Ayn Rand, read by Bernadette Dunn. Back in a minute. Charlie Kirk, rest in peace.